are jumping into the respiratory system. If you were following along, we're here over on page 454. And I think this will be good that you have already seen all this anatomy, right? You saw the pharynx, you saw the lungs, you saw the trachea, all the main pieces, the diaphragm, all these things you saw in your cats. But now we're just going to talk about how it works. The anatomy, I think, should be fairly easy for you. The physiology will be a little more complex. Just to give you, so I know it's been a while since we all sat here together. I just do need your attention. It's a strange schedule for this unit. So we're here this week, right? This is Tuesday, so we've got the rest of these 4 days. I can't remember if we meet twice on Thursday or not. We might only meet once, I think, this Thursday. I have to look. And then we have spring break, right? The week we come back, Monday is service day, and some of you are still mission tripping. Then we've got Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday is our summative assessment. Why? Because Friday is Good Friday. We're not here. Okay? So I'm giving you that heads up.
I think there's at least like 12 of us going on mission trip. We won't have to study what we'll have only 1 day since we're coming back to school Wednesday. That's only 1 day to study for that test. I don't think.
All right, well, I'll take a look at that. I'll take a look at that. I appreciate you letting me know about that. If we need to push it back to the Monday, there's a potential of that. There's a potential of that. Thank you. You going to say the same thing, Nels? Okay. Okay. Good to know. I appreciate you letting me know. What I would encourage you, though, is let's make sure, and we're into almost, this is March now. Are you comfortable you need to start studying now for your assessment? Okay, that's how I want this class to work for you. I don't give you much outside work. Start now, right? And then when you get to the actual test time, it's just review. So we'll take a look at it. We'll take a look at it. All right, so let's jump in. The main point of the respiratory system is to do what? To breathe. Okay, let's go more details. What do we mean by breathing? Bring oxygen in and get the waste product, carbon dioxide, out, right? So there's this exchange of gases, right? In the blood, oxygen, carbon dioxide. And this process of respiration has lots of pieces that we'll talk about. This ventilation, actually getting air into your lungs. The gas exchange, from your lungs actually into the blood, the capillaries. The transporting that gas to the cells. And then actually the cells taking that and using it. This is all part of this respiration process. On Schoology are the study guide, the slideshow, all those pieces are all present there for you. So let's start with a bit of the anatomy here. You can really break the organs into two pieces. And again, I'm begging you for your attention, okay? Little conversations about something related to this I'm okay with, but don't get distracted. I realize you're sitting with who you want to, right? Okay? Let's be wise. The upper respiratory tract, you're basically talking about from nose to pharynx. Okay? And then the lower respiratory, basically from the larynx down through the lungs. Here is your picture. That this is here on page 454. You should be pretty comfortable with this picture. It's your generalized anatomy picture of the respiratory system. That you deal with the nose, the nostrils, the nasal cavity. So let me close this blind here. It's nice to be in the sunshine though, isn't it? I don't know about you, but I miss sunshine. We also have the oral cavity, because of course you can breathe through your mouth or your nose. Both of those places work. Those guys connect back in the back through the pharynx. The epiglottis, which we'll talk about that in a few minutes, coming down into the larynx, your vocal cords, voice box area, down into the trachea with those nice cartilaginous rings, down into the bronchioles, that becomes that bronchial tree going all through the lungs there. So let's jump into the nose. Nose is mostly cartilage. I don't know if you realize that. Most of this stuff here that's holding your glasses up, like that's cartilage, right? You do have these tiny little nasal bones on the very top part, like where most of our glasses rest when they sit on our nose. That is on bone, but the rest of the nose is all cartilage. What kind of functions, what kind of functions does the nose perform? Sorry? Okay, it's an actual entrance point, so air can come in. Okay, what do you mean by that? Okay, so it's detecting it, or it's preventing them from entering? Yeah. The detecting, I guess you would say that's your sense of smell. But yeah, those nose hairs act like a filter. And again, the older you get, the longer those hairs get, and you got to start trimming them and all that kind of stuff. You'll get there someday, I promise. It's good times. Okay? But no, almost every entrance, and this is just kind of a universal thing in our body, almost every entrance has hair that protects it. And it very much is for a filter. That's the whole purpose behind it. Okay? Inside the nose, up in this upper nasal space, you have what they call the nasal conchae. Conchae means shell, right? It looks like a shell. If you open it up, that's what it kind of looks like, the sides of a shell. Any idea what that's for? Yes, please. Sure. So that gives us, like, we're actually, the little bumps and areas give us more surface area. Okay, so but why? Why do we need more surface area up in our nasal area? Because it's one of the main functions about what the nose does for the air coming in. Doesn't matter too much in the summer, but in the winter it does matter. Yes, ma'am? Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is a little bit different, but yes. So it's warming. It's warming that air. Because actually one of the things that we want air to be is reasonably warm. If you've ever been outside and you're really exercising or working hard, like your lungs can almost hurt. Like the air is so cold because it doesn't have time for you to warm it up before it comes in. It also helps to moisturize that air.
So when you say know the anatomy, for the anatomy of the nasal cavity, what exactly do you want to
Again, just where it is. That would be a pointed out piece. There's not really anything particular there.
Okay, so we can just like know that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm good with that. Okay, your nose is divided into two nostrils by, again, this nasal septum. And again, that's just a cartilaginous piece that rolls all the way up inside your nose. The nasal septum. And again, we mostly trap by the mucus in our nose and in our throat areas is trapping these foreign particles. You realize much of that just gets carried down into your stomach, which I know sounds kind of gross, but that is where most of your mucus ends up, is down into the stomach, and just gets digested, kills the bacteria from the gastric acid, and we're all good. When you get a cold or something, now you're overproducing this mucus, right? And now it starts running down, you get these big blobs that you got to blow out or you sneeze out, etc. We cool? You have these areas up above in your skull called the paranasal sinuses. What does para mean? Para. It means around, like near. Right? And nasal, the nose. So these are the sinuses that are around or near your nose. Does that make sense? That's what the language is telling you. And these are air-filled spaces. Now, they do have mucous membranes that line them. But their main piece that they do is they help make your skull not so heavy. If this was just all solid bone, it would be a very heavy thing. It would be very difficult to hold your neck upright. And it also acts as a resonance chamber for your voice. Now, have you ever had a nice cold and like it sounds like you talk like this? Like there's just hardly any resonance to your voice? It's because all that's stuffed, right? And so by having them open, your voice sounds more resonant and more loud and more clear. Those of you who do choir, they're always talking about getting up in your nose, right? Sing from out here, not back here in your throat, right? It makes a difference depending on where that resonance is coming from. The pharynx. And this was one that many of you, this was one that I think almost all of you got tested on your cat test. Or not cat, pig test. I always want to default to cats. We dissected cats for so long. Pigs have only been the last 2 years for me, so I'm still learning them as you are. The pharynx is that common passageway that both air and food travel down. When you swallow, that's where the food goes first, right? And then from the pharynx, it breaks into 2 pieces, right? Here's our picture. Pharynx here. Now, they had a bunch of other names for the pharynx, the nasopharynx and the oropharynx. I'm not too worried about that. We didn't learn those, and I'm not worried about you knowing the difference. Nasal, by the way, just means nose. So the nose part of the pharynx is the connection from the nose to the mouth. And the oro is talking about oral, right? So this would be the part from the mouth going down. That's the only difference between them. But you have this bifurcation, this splitting, where you go the trachea one way and you go the esophagus the other way. Yes, sir? Is that why it's like when you swallow wrong? Yeah, right. You cough and you choke and you sputter. Yeah. What is it that keeps that swallowing food or liquid from going down?
them as they vibrate. That helps you with good sound. And as I go up in pitches, you see that my vocal folds are stretching out. One of the things that is notable about my vocal folds is that I have a little bit of acid reflux. So you can see that the space between my vocal folds in the back of the picture, it's a little red and puffy. And that's an indication that I have a little bit of reflux. Although
She was talking about, I'll go back here, talking about this area here. It's a little more red on hers. Talking about acid reflux, basically the stomach acid coming back up the esophagus and causing some irritation, causing some burns there.
And that's an indication that I have a little bit of reflux. Although it doesn't seem to be impacting the sound too much.
You would describe this as being 100% normal as far as vocal folds are considered?
They do seem to be normal. The way I use my vocal folds is a little different. I have a little gap in the back, and you can appreciate that because my voice is slightly breathy. But that's a cultural norm for American females. Other than that, they're pretty normal. They're white and curly, and they don't have any lumps or bumps on the edges of them that would impair the skin on the vocal folds from vibrating.
Have you heard of vocal nodules? If you're a Pitch Perfect fan, you may have heard from it there. Yeah, that's, so you'd be actually talking about, you could see damage to these rings. Think about somebody who is singing rock and roll music. That's very, and very harsh and very, like, you'd be doing some damage to these vocal cords. Very common for those kind of singers to have problems with their voice and actually even have to have surgery on their vocal cords because they get damaged. All right. Had you seen anything like that before? Yeah, it's kind of cool. So that would be a speech and language pathologist, is somebody who would work with voice kind of pieces. Ryan's mom actually is a speech and language pathologist. Yes?
One interesting thing, like I got into this weird little research thing about the voice kind of singing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this.
Shh.
So you do use the true vocal cords to kind of phonate the actual singing voice, but you can train to use the false vocal cords to try to manipulate that sound to where you can have this kind of overtone kind of singing. It's called tube and throat singing, or the cardia. And so people like Eastern cultures have been able to kind of manipulate that sound. And get this kind of really unique, almost ethereal sound.
Very cool.
I'm just thinking like, if we were able to fully kind of use everything that God's given us.
That's neat. Yeah, I like that. I like that. When I was at Andrews, a lot of the warm-up time we spent in choir working on that exact kind of sound. That if you would work a whole choir together singing one pitch, if everybody is on that pitch the right way, you'll get these overtones that will come that are like 2 octaves higher and a note that's not the same note, but it's a harmonic note. And you can just hear it. If the room is good enough, you can hear it, and everyone's in the right pitch. It's really cool. And we used to work on that a ton, just trying to get that blended sound. So it's not 30 voices individually, it's one voice that all has the same sound, which I think it was very cool, very neat to do. All right, let's keep moving on down. The trachea, so that extends downward, anterior to the esophagus. And remember, you all saw this on your pigs, right? The esophagus ran right behind the trachea, and then it splits, where it goes into the left and the right bronchi. Why does it split? Because you've got 2 lungs, right? You need to send the air to both of those places, right? And the inner wall of the trachea is lined with ciliated mucous membrane. So ciliated means it has cilia, right? And what is the point of that cilia? Because the cilia there's mucus that's all on there from those goblet cells. What's the point of that? Yes, sir? Okay. To push what down? Okay. You have some, if it pushes it down, it'll go into the lungs, right? And we don't usually want mucus to build up in our lungs. So what do you think that cilia is looking to do? It's actually pushing it up, like the opposite direction, right? Again, think about when you're sick, right? And you cough, what often do you bring up? Yeah, that nice greeny, yellowy, tasty mucus, right? That's the point of these cilia. Because that mucus is trapping these particles. There's actually some infection going on usually in your lungs when you're sick, right? And so this is sending that stuff back up and out. Does that make sense? If it's above the trachea, it could be sending it down into the stomach to be digested. But in this case, we're already past the divide, so to go downward actually means go into the lungs. And we want the lungs to stay clear as much as possible. That's what the cilia on the trachea is for, yes. I mean, the trachea's main function is to get air from the mouth down to the lungs. That would be its main function. And then they have these cartilaginous rings that are all around the inside. And you remember seeing that on your pig very nicely. Why? Can somebody give me a why? Like, why do we have these rings? Give me raised hands here. Why? Because it's certainly there's no other one of these tubes. You saw lots of tubes on your pig that didn't have these cartilaginous rings. Why this one, Emily? Yeah, it doesn't collapse. We want to keep that open so you can breathe all the time, right? You're doing it every couple of seconds. So it wouldn't make sense for it to be collapsed and then have to open back up and collapse and open back up. Well done. The bronchial tree, which always makes me chuckle, because I think about a tree like growing, but that's what it looks like. If you really see the picture, it looks like an upside down tree, because those two bronchi break apart into smaller pieces. And they go from the trachea down to each individual alveoli. From the primary bronchus, then moving into the bronchioles, and then actually to the alveolar ducts, which go right into the alveoli itself. And then the alveoli is what actually do the work. And we're going to spend a whole lot more time talking about that, but let me pull this back so you can see. Trachea coming down, breaking into the primary bronchuses, and then secondary and tertiary, and then the terminal is just the very end piece, where that's where you get these nice, what I always think of as clusters of grapes, these alveoli sacs, which that's where the actual exchange is happening. Okay? I put this picture up here as well. This is a great shot that will show you. We're going to talk much more about how the alveoli works. But in this one picture, it captures the essence of how these guys work. This is the very bottom where you end up breathing, right? The air comes into these sacs. The sacs are surrounded by blood vessels, these tiny little capillaries. And that's where this exchange is made. Oxygen coming into the blood, carbon dioxide moving out of the blood. And again, that's the key piece. The functional unit of your respiratory system is the alveoli. This is the thing actually doing the work. All the rest is basically just tubes to get it down to the alveoli. Any questions there? My encouragement for you, and I'll get your question in 1 second. My encouragement for you is to make sure that you spend some time working on these questions. They are due on Friday. In my opinion, there's not a ton of stuff in this chapter. I think this is a fairly straightforward chapter for you. Shh. So we're going to spend a little bit more time on some of the pathophysiology, like when things go wrong, what those look like, some of the disease pieces that are involved with the lungs, because we do a lot of that. It's a fairly common thing for us to deal with. I'm going to stop this here.